Okay. So if anybody's wondering what the heck we're doing, we're trying to do some studies, and then Kurt had some really insightful thoughts on what's really going on, current events, on all this anti-Semitic. It's a dumpster fire. But so go ahead, Kurt.
Yeah, it really
What's your
is.
thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, I was reading. In fact, if you want to go back and read it, go back and read Romans 11, where Paul talks about this time. I think so. He's talking about a time where the Gentiles were grafted into the tree of life, the olive tree, and
Right.
how he broke off branches, making room for us in that olive tree. And then he says, look, he said, don't boast in the fact that you've been grafted in, and don't take it for granted that you've been grafted in, because God can break those unnatural. You're the unnatural branch. You can be broken off and cast off actually.
Amen.
So he's saying, look, and also the Jews, don't count the Jews out, because if their fall was a blessing, if they were a blessing when they fell, how much more of a blessing are they going to be to the world when they come to their fullness? So he mentions a fullness for the Jews. Now, looks like this is going to happen at the end of time, when the Jews finally come or God actually, through his plan, brings the Jews back into his promise. And I think he does that with the marriage covenant. You and I have talked about that.
Yeah, I agree.
That through the marriage covenant, he can graft them in. He can be their covering. He can be the one. He can be their host in heaven, so to speak. Now we're the sons and daughters of God, so it's a little different. So we have to receive them by faith. They don't necessarily have to. They've had this marriage covenant for throughout history, and of course that was broken in his death. I don't want to go on and explain that, but let me get on to this.
Sure.
What
Sure.
was it? You get on to finally
Yeah.
get to the question.
Yeah. The dumpster fire. I mean,
Anti-Semitism.
it has to
Right.
happen. Let me just be
Right.
clear. I'm not. It has to happen, but it's still in the way that it's being orchestrated is really, it's not biblical. If
Right.
all the so-called believers would stick to the Bible and explain it, then we wouldn't have half of the. It's vicious. It's vicious and hateful. It's just terrible.
Well, in all fairness, the Jews themselves were provoked to jealousy with the Gentiles receiving, a Judeo-based religion, so to speak, from their supposed Mashiach, a
Sure.
Jewish man that they don't really consider it the Messiah, but yet some did.
Right.
So they
Right.
they've been provoked to jealousy, and also they've been provoked to some wrath in that. So, and it speaks of that in the word. But the so what's happened is, through anti-Semitism, there's been separation between the Gentile and the Hebrew, throughout history, to the point that there was some conflict and some other things that happened, during the
Right.
Middle Ages, where they actually tried to, convert the Jews over to, Catholicism and Christianity, so, and the Jews rejected it, still do. Of course, we saw that during the Maccabean revolt, back in the 160, BC, when the Jews, the Greeks tried to convert the Jews over to, Hellenize them, actually, to make
Right.
them Greeks,
Right.
and to
Right.
worship the Greek gods. They wouldn't do it.
Right.
So, but the thing is, what God's doing here is that now he's bringing a fullness about to the Jews, because the fullness of the Gentiles is just about up.
Yes.
So what that's doing is it's sparking this anti-Semitism everywhere, which is driving not only the Jews back to Israel, but it's also uniting them in their heritage. In other words, I know a lot of Hebrew friends. I have Hebrew relatives,
Hmm.
and they right now they feel provoked, and they feel like, this what they call it, where they're, this, when they force it on them, this is creating, them to kind of gather together,
Yeah.
so
They have to. They have to defend themselves, and to your point, I mean, that's their right. And, ordained by God to carry the oracles, for our
Yeah.
benefit. And it's all for our benefit. And I agree with you. Everybody's been provoked to jealousy. He's my God and he's everyone's God, right? And it's yeah, but we need more of that teaching. We more everybody understand that he came for all of us. There's no doubt.
But I think what we're saying that, God's raising shortly now, going to raise up the Jewish nation. And you're seeing it in this, I think, this attack on the Prince of Persia, Iran, and
Hmm.
you saw the world where NATO's falling apart because, you know, uh, they didn't want to come to the aid of Israel, not the United States, Israel.
Right.
It was their
Right.
anti-Semitism. It really wasn't. They're mad at Trump. People are
No.
trying to make it that way.
That's right.
It's they're anti-Semitic,
Amen.
and because of the persecution, now the Jews feel in this persecution,
Right.
and it's that persecution that's actually making them kind of get stronger. You ever notice that when a people are persecuted, they get stronger, not weaker. You
Right.
saw that in the church in China and other places where they were persecuted. People get, even in Iran right now, there's a move for Christianity.
Yeah.
But I think that the time of fullness for the Gentiles just about run out, and you're going to see the fullness of the Gentiles the fullness of the Hebrews come about because of the persecution that's on them right now and the anti-Semitism in the world. It's
Amen.
increasing.
I agree.
It's
I agree.
increasing. It's increasing with purpose.
I agree.
That's
I
my
agree.
theory.
Mine too.
I'll stay with. Yeah, that's our theory. I should have said not my theory. It's our theory. We've talked about this.
Yeah.
So anyway,
All right. All right. Just wanted that to go out. All right. Take care.
all right,
Shalom.
all right. Take care. Shalom.